Are you someone who has honorably served our country or the surviving spouse of one of those heroes and you're interested in owning a home? Guess what? There is a fantastic product available to help you buy a house that is only available to veterans and their spouses.
It's true. VA loans are really, it's our way of saying thank you to those who have honorably served our country. And like you said, it's available to veterans and surviving spouses of veterans, even if he or she did not pass away on duty. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So if you're a surviving spouse and it was back home, unfortunately, and your spouse passed away back home, it doesn't mean that you're ineligible for this as well. Excuse me, getting all choked up.
Still able to get this loan. And like Joe said, this is kind of the industry's way and the government's way of saying thank you to those who have served, not to exclude anybody else, but to give you all the benefit, all the honor that we can possibly give you. And it's a fantastic loan product because, Joe, it is...
Well, there's zero money down options. Basically, you have a certificate of eligibility which entitles you to a certain amount of money based off of your service. So even on your second home, after you've already used this once, you still have options to reap the benefits of that. So but the biggest thing is there's potential for zero money down with a VA loan. You also have access to the best rates possible. It's a terrific loan. It's a great way to say thank you.
Absolutely. Now, there are some requirements for VA loans beyond just, being a veteran. Talk about some of those things. What kind of credit requirements or other loan requirements are we looking at?
So I really want to talk about two things here. VA loans are government loans. So the appraisal that has to happen is technically a government appraisal, which means that it is more strict. There's a list of requirements for government appraisals. The most strict piece on that list is no peeling paint, in my opinion. There's also a lot of things on that appraisal list that are safety oriented. So no loose wiring, stairs have to have handrails, that sort of nature. Windows have to be intact. They don't have to be brand spanking new, but they have to be intact.
So we want to make sure that our veterans and their families are moving into homes that are safe.
Yes.
And that are move-in ready homes. This is not the product if you are looking at a complete rehab job.
No, not at all. This is for you to move into a home. Most government loans, actually, it's a pretty good rule of thumb that with most government loans, the purpose of those loans are to get people in houses. In the restaurant industry, they call it put butts in seats. We got to get people in houses.
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, Joe, I do want to stop and deviate here from that just a second, and let's dispel a myth.
Sure.
Because there is a myth in the real estate industry that VA loans are harder than any other loan to close.
No.
And that's actually the complete opposite of truth from all of the data. VA loans have one of the highest closure rates out there. So why do you think that might be from an industry professional standpoint that perception exists?
So I think a lot of it has to do with the government appraisal. I think that's a tough hurdle to get over. There is paperwork required. You have to have that certificate of eligibility. So, but we're talking about paperwork and making sure that the house is going to pass an appraisal, guys. I mean, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. The important thing is to get you into a house for as little money down as possible.
Are there additional requirements on the seller for a VA loan?
Additional requirements on the seller for the VA loan? Not that I'm aware of.
And I'll tell you, I heard this. When I came into the industry, this is something that I was told by agents. Oh, VA loans, they're great loans for veterans, but they're harder to close. They're harder to close. And I had that perception for a while until I did my first VA loan. And here's the thing. At that point, I'd already closed a couple of USDA loans, first year in the industry, already closed a couple of FHA loans. The VA loan process was exactly the same as both of those. The difference was this, and I want to mention this with my friend Joe here so that you understand that who you work with really is important, because my veteran was working with Navy Federal as their lender. And when we got the final disclosure, the Alta statement, right? The lenders charge a fee. Guess what? Joe does not work for free. He's a nice guy, but he does these loans, he gets paid. So a normal loan, FHA, conventional, USDA, VA, there's always going to be a lender fee attached, okay? And that usually is part of the closing costs.
Yes, usually. So a lot of the closing costs are more clerical oriented. So lenders, at least with preferred rate, lenders get paid after the loan gets sold to a servicing company. So our business model is to write the loan for you, get you in the house. I mean, it starts off with a pre-approval. We need to start there. But the whole point is to get you into a house, and then, but we don't hold on to the mortgage. You're not going to be paying us for the next however long you'd like to be living there. Usually it's not going to be 30 years. But
Most of the time.
the mortgage is structured over 30 years. So there's actually I'm not paid out of closing costs. There's not going to be any money that comes out of your pocket.
But there's a processing fee that goes in to cover all of this. And that's standard across the board.
Yes.
Okay. This particular company that promotes themselves as helping veterans and servicing veterans, their processing fee, this was a $240,000 house, fee was $14,000.
Seems steep.
It was outrageous. Versus local lender. Now, this was a national chain that, again, we're serving veterans. We serve veterans. And they do have lots of great products. I'm not going to lie and say that they don't. But when it comes to helping veterans buy homes, their processing fee is like 10 times higher than what most local lenders are going to charge to go through the process and get the loan approved, okay? So my zero down VA loan guy still had to bring $15,000 to closing.
Oh, zero down for the low cost of $15,000.
And it was actually 10 because I got $5,000 in closing costs for him because I was thinking standard closing costs, which closing costs are going to include the funding fee for the lender, usually your prepaid taxes and your prepaid insurance going into escrow. Right. So there are some costs, but a lot of times we can get that covered by the seller. Not always, but a lot of times we can get that covered by the seller. And in that price point, $5,000 should have been more than enough. And yet my veteran who had served his country and was now working a full-time job had to still bring $10,000 for his zero down VA loan. I was outraged. But then here's the sad part, is I found out that happens regularly because the next VA loan that I had with somebody that was also using this company, I asked the lender, I said, I want to know what your charges are before we get to the end, because my lady, this was a lady the second time, is thinking she's moving in with no money down. They're like, oh no, it's going to cost blah, 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 blah. And I told her that. And I am not in the business of taking clients away from lenders that they are already working with, because I don't want lenders to take clients away from buyers that I'm working with. But I went to her and I said, listen, you are getting a fantastic loan. You have earned the right to move into your house with no money down. Here's the reality. And she ended up actually flipping to my local lender at that time, whose servicing fee was much more reasonable than the $12,000 that they were going to charge her at this other company. So I tell you this story as we talk about VA loans, because this is such a fantastic product. And it is a very doable situation. We have to find, obviously, a house that's going to qualify. But if it's going to qualify for FHA or USDA, it's almost always going to qualify for VA as well.
Yes.
So if we find a house that is going to qualify and you qualify, let's make sure that we are actually getting you the best deal, not just on paper. And honestly, I can work with any lender, okay? And I did in that first case. But my responsibility is to do what's best for my client, and it is not best for my VA buyers to spend $10, $12 $15 in processing fees on a loan that you have earned the right.
It defeats the whole purpose.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And it's absolutely outrageous, unfortunately, that this happens in the industry with these certain companies. So if you are a veteran or the surviving spouse of a veteran and you want to buy a home and you want to pursue options, get your quote from those other places. But please let me connect you to a local lender such as Joe, who can quote you. My guess is most of the time you're going to be able to beat the rate of that big box chain anyway. And you're definitely going to beat the fees. And what does that amount to, folks? That amounts to saving money, keeping it in your pocket. And that's what's important because you've earned it.